Good day, each and everyone. My name is Ishmael again from South Africa. This is going to be episode 5 of my story, guys. This is where I'm going to be touching base more on when I came back home now with my brother and my father without, finding the guy that my father was looking for, which was then my mother's boyfriend, in the absence of my father, of my real father. So my father comes back, guys, and when we got back, we found my granny and my mother. If you are an African, let me just put it that way, you go to the mountains to fetch the woods, you come back with the woods on top of your head, and then you throw them down. You untie that, wrapping, I don't know what you call that thing. Yeah, in tambo, in my language, it's called tambo. It's a rope. Yeah, you're untying the rope, from the woods. So my father got there and he started causing the drama. My father started causing the drama that much in a way that I started getting scared because he wanted to physically fight my mother. And it happened that that thing was prolonged. It was very much prolonged, that the fight took the whole day, and my mother ended up running away, from home because she doesn't want to be injured, because she did confess when I overheard the conversation, and my father was asking my mother whether my mother was dating the guy, and my mother said, yes, of course I was dating the guy, because you were not there, you were not contacting, I didn't know whether you were dead or alive, and I didn't know where to kind of look for you, because I never knew where you've been. And my father started causing a drama. My mother ended up running away. My mother ran away, and we never knew where she was. When I say we, I'm talking about me, my brother, and my grandmother, who gave birth to my mother. So now at home, it's me, it's my brother. By the time I think I was very young. It was 1996, man. It was I think I was just 10 years old or 8 years old. I can't remember properly. I was very young. I was born in 1988. You can do the maths there. So I'm so scared, and we're not used to this kind of domestic violence or stuff like that. We were living in peace, and it happened that my mother ran away, and we never knew where she's been. And now, as she ran away, take note, my father coming back home, he is coming back to my mother's home, because my father didn't have a place of his own to stay, except for whatever that he had in Johannesburg. So he's coming back to where my mother lives, and it's her rightful property, in effect, that it was, or it is, my mother's property, which was legally handed over to my mother because my mother was the last born. She was very much loved by my granny. So my mother ran away. It's me now and my brother and my granny and my father. So my father started causing that drama now directly to my granny, because my mother is not there, to a point where it turned over to me as well to say, look, you should know where your mother is. Because my father attempted to go back to that gentleman's house, and he heard that the guy disappeared. The guy is gone. He cannot find the guy anywhere at all. So due to that, he was now forcing me to show him where my mother was. And I was like, I don't know. I wouldn't know where my mother would go. I don't even know a single relative of my mother. And then the next thing, he started beating me up for not showing him exactly where my mother was, and I didn't know where my mother was. So, you go to school and you come back, and you go to school and then you come back. I was still at the primary school. And then the next thing, I don't know what happened. I overheard somebody telling me that my mother went to her uncle's place, which was about 70 kilometers away, and I don't know to which direction because I didn't know fuck all. I was young. And eventually, my mother got tired of like staying there without knowing what is happening back here. And trust me, my granny was getting beatings. Like, my granny was being beaten by my father. I was continuously beaten by my father to not show him where my mother was. And I didn't know. And eventually, it's just like my mother sensed it in a sense that, like, I have to go back home and see what is happening. She came back and then she just sneaked in, and then I think she found that my father was out drinking, and I think she stayed. Yes, she stayed definitely. And pretty much that night, my father came back drunk. And we thought maybe things would be better. And he started assaulting my mother. To be honest with everybody out there, I didn't see my father, physically beating up my mother, but I could hear my mother screaming, saying, "Help! Help!" And there's no way that we can jump in and help a person when the one that's doing the beatings is carrying a gun. I was with my father the same morning, and then he was carrying a gun. And I'm young. There's nothing I can do to a man carrying a gun. I had to just hide somewhere under the blankets, and I thought, you know what, this is what I've heard about this man, and it's just getting worse and worse, and I'm now very scared. And I remember the screaming stopped, and then eventually my mother kind of passed out due to severe beatings, because my mother, if in South Africa, old women like 1970s, they would have like big afro. My father ended up like taking my mother and made a seat between both his legs, and he was ripping off the hair with his hands, with his bare hands, off my mother's head, and my mother was bleeding. You can just imagine that happening. My mother was bleeding and she was crying, and she didn't have hair, in many spots of the head, and she passed out due to that. And my father lifted my mother to the mountains, and he then started, hitting her with rocks, big rocks. The intention was definitely to kill her, but she survived. And him being him, he came back home and he slept, He slept knowing that my mother was not there. He actually left her in the mountains. And my mother was then found by certain ladies that were going to fetch wood also, particularly, the following morning. And then she was still breathing, and then she was then rushed to the hospital. But we didn't know, because all we needed to do was to go to school. So I didn't know where my mother was, and I didn't know who to ask or what to do in that case. It was quite hectic that, I'm starting to feel emotional right now. I'm going to stop this video at this point of time, and then I'm going to resume shortly. And that's going to be episode 6 of my story that I'll be coming up with. And thank you for tuning in, guys.